I'm Sue, for those of you who know me. I think that I was probably Mike's first friend when he came here, and certainly his confidant for many of the years that he spent here. As you may or may not know, Mike worked for DuPont for his career and worked with chemicals. Mike also spent a lot of his life trying to tame the chemicals in his brain. He loved the woods. He loved Quakerism. We connected as Unitarian Universalists as well. For all kinds of reasons, there were some people here who misunderstood Mike. But if you had the privilege of getting to know him well, you would know him as fiercely loyal, protective. He was so proud of you. What you probably don't know is how incredibly generous Mike West was. For the years I was director here, he established the Director's Discretionary Fund, which was unknown to all of you. But it was consistently funded by Mike's checks. And it allowed me to buy a bed for a student who was sleeping on the floor. It allowed me to buy the first pair of real sneakers one of our students had so that he could run in the Antorcha as a senior in high school. His first pair of new sneakers. I bought supplies for teachers. I bought food for families. I bought clothes for students. And this went on for years, all the years I was here. When there was a conflict about Ulysses and I were slowly paying for our funeral plots here. Once a month, Ulysses would clean the cemetery, and we would put that money aside for our plots. And then we got to the end, and Ulysses couldn't clean the cemetery anymore because he didn't have Factura Electronica and all kinds of things. And then the accountant said, no, you still owe $200 and something because of the tipo de cambio, the exchange rate. Mike was pissed off. And so he wrote a check and he sent us a note and he said, you now can rest in peace. I also want to bring a message from Kate, who respected Mike's wishes to not come back and be with him in this time. But she wants everyone to know that Mike was, I think she's here, the love of his life. And she's so grateful for the time that they were able to enjoy together and to be together. She loves him so much. She's, I think, here in the meeting, but said it would be hard for her to speak because there are just too many tears. Mike loved nature and felt probably most comfortable on a trail hiking by himself, often navigating uncharted territory with his complex GPS system. But the other place that he felt most comfortable was in the basement of Bar Amigos. I remember getting called on the carpet by some of the leadership in the Quaker family as director of this school because they found out that I was hanging out at Bar Amigos in the basement with Mike and other people, and maybe that wasn't that appropriate for the director of a school. But with his help and others, we established an amazing group of pool players that came from the Institute CIEE, the Creativa, the Escuela de los Amigos, and the community. And we spent 3 or 4 years in an amazing pool league that met once a week and brought together this hugely diverse group of individuals. Mike waited for the moments that I would have to leave the country to do work so that Ulysses would be alone, because that meant he could play pool with Ulysses. The last time that I left and Ulysses was left behind in Monteverde, the hours and hours and hours of practicing that Mike worked with Camacho almost every other day in Bar Amigos paid off. And when Ulysses played with him the last time, Mike beat him 3 games. And that's quite an accomplishment. So I want to extend an invitation to anyone who wants to join us at 1 o'clock at Bar Amigos. We will be playing pool in Mike's honor. We will be toasting with chili guaro, because he would buy a bottle of chili guaro and store it in the refrigerator in Bar Amigos so that anyone who wanted a drink could have one. Mike always paid for pool. We'd give him the ride and he'd pay for everything.
Hi, I'm Tim, for those who don't know me. So Elena and I moved back to Monteverde after a considerable absence in January 2017. And at our first meeting for worship, we met Mike, who had just moved here about 3 weeks before. So we were sort of co-immigrants, I guess. I first really started to get to know him, I think, because we were in the same spiritual sharing group. There were 4 of us in the group, including Elena and me and Mike and Tim Litsky. And so we had a chance to hear each other's stories, our life stories, different aspects of it, different times. That was how we started. The group was sort of introducing ourselves to the extent that we felt like to each other. And I want to second Sue's her description of his generosity, to generosity not only with his money, but with his spirit, generosity of spirit. I never heard him criticize anyone without also providing at least one other side, one other way to see it from their point of view, and perhaps from other points of view as well. That was it's kind of a compulsion that he and I shared of seeing things from as many points, from all points of view, that not just our own. And I think early on in our spiritual sharing group, he recognized that I was, or at least in his estimation, was overworked and overstressed. And he began to invite me out to lunch once a week. At my work in Santa Elena, he would take me to the restaurant of my choice, and we would spend however much, whether sometimes it was only 45 minutes and sometimes it's extended to 2 hours, depending on how busy I was, but a very pleasant time. Sometimes just talking about everyday things, sometimes talking about, world issues or scientific things, or just things that interested us. And sometimes stories from our lives as well. Another example of his generosity is that as director of the community fund, I could let him know when Rio Shanti was running out of money, and he would replenish whenever that seemed necessary. And when I was, and still am, helping raise money for a couple of poor families outside the community that were just having the most incredible hard life. Mike got them through several medical emergencies, and in recent times, when I picked up this cause again in the last few months, when he would come up to our house after I stopped working at the Fondo, we started having weekly hikes in the woods, and he almost always came with a pocket full of money for Andrea, because he would see my updates as to what had happened since we last talked. He probably wouldn't approve of my sharing all this. Sorry, Mike. I just want everyone to know the things you would never say about yourself. Um, um, yeah, I knew Mike for 6 years. That isn't to say I knew him well. Sure, there was lots more to know. Lots more to know. But yes, I never went to Bar Amigos with him, but I did spend time in the woods with him. And he really, he loved nature. And so we would share that. But yes, Mike is a generous soul, generous person, gentle, and curious, just interested in everything. As Sue mentioned, when he had his brain under control, which was a struggle more recently, but he just he loved to think, he loved to learn. I'm gonna miss him.
Can I speak from the other world? Is that possible? Can I speak on Zoom? Yes? Oh. Ruth. Yes. Yeah. Hello. Hello. It's wonderful to see you all. And I just want to I miss you all very much in Monteverde. I just wanted to say I also came to Monteverde at the same time as Mike did, and stayed at Tarcissio's with him at Tarcissio's location for at least a year. And I just wanted to say, to watch him and Tarcisio, if you never had the opportunity, engage in conversations, and mostly in Spanish, but every once in a while, you know, my Spanish is terrible. Every once in a while, they would include me. They just had so much fun. And I don't know if Tarcisio is there or not, but he brought such joy to and vice versa. They just brought so much joy to each other, and you could just see what two wonderful people, just living in your wonderful community, brought to life, and brought to my life too. Thank you. God bless you.
Hello, I'm Ed, for anyone who doesn't know me. Mike was a very good friend to me as well. He is one of the few people in the community who I could geek out with about programming and chemistry and physics, and especially how they related to pool. He felt very strongly about pool, very strongly about playing by the rules. Mike had a very strong sense of what was right and justice, which resonated with me. In keeping with the theme of generosity, I think it's okay to reveal now for those of you here that the mysterious and elusive beer fairy who used to leave deposits of wonderful beers in people's houses was none other than Mike West. And also something that I don't think anyone's mentioned before along those lines is that he had a great sense of humor. A peculiar sense of humor, but it was one that really resonated with me. And it was one of the things we really bonded with. And so in that spirit, you can just pretend that this is actually funny for anyone who doesn't get it, but Mike would get it. He's now in a place where he'll finally discover the truth of whether God created the universe as an elegant abstraction of Lisp programming or as a cobbled together set of Perl scripts. We all have our views on it. But he was a very good friend, and I will miss him greatly.
I don't know if I can get through this without sobbing uncontrollably, but I was so lucky to have Mike as my brother. He was my older brother, and sometimes he'd have to take care of me, and I tortured him. He wouldn't let me use his fishing rod when we were in New York. So I told him I was going to run away. And I started running away. And he was following me, sobbing, begging me to come back. He never had a bad word to say about anyone. You're so right. And he could recognize things in people that maybe were non-optimal, but he would think about maybe why they had done that and was always generous in spirit to them and open to the fact that he might not have all the data. He always wanted his decisions to be data-driven with true and accurate information. And I think he hoped for that treatment from others that maybe didn't always receive it. But that's what he wanted. And, you guys are right about his generosity because I helped him with his finances. So I knew, I did his taxes. I saw all of this, and his generosity continued to this day. And he thought about ways, he even made notes in his last wishes about things he would like to have done to make sure that generosity could continue after his life ended. He was an amazing parent. And he taught me, he saved my daughter from a bad upbringing, I think. He modeled to me that kids are just people with less experience. And they, need a little grace. If you take them out of their environment, it's important to compensate and be kind and never bully them or terrorize them or any of that. He was not raised that way, but he learned what to do by reading and studying as he would study everything. And he gave me the best possible example in all ways. And I am not always so gracious as my brother. And I do have unkind words sometimes for people. But he would always talk to me very calmly about perhaps another perspective and would listen. And he was always there for me. No matter how far away he was, he would
he would do anything to help. And I think that spirit carried throughout his life and through this community. And I want to say that he loved Tarcisio and Marinella and the family. After his illness, when he stayed with me, I begged him to stay in Oregon. And he wouldn't. He's, nope, I'm going home. And he saw Tarcisio as the dad he never had. And Marinella, they were his family. He told me they called him, Tarcisio was the king, but they called him the prince. and they treated him like a prince. And, you know, I am grateful that he has brought that family to my life as well. And they have shown so much kindness to us in this difficult time. And I want to thank all of the people in this community who shared time and love and generosity and jokes with him. He could be hysterically funny, and yes, his humor was very quirky, as is my whole entire family's. So thank you all, and thank you for coming. Thank you for arranging this.
Ya no puedo estar de pie.
Él tenía preparada su comida, a veces no, y él esperaba con paciencia, y comía de todo, no había problema, no había pan, no había problema, no había huevo, no. Y después iba y regresaba con cartones de huevo, de pan. Cuando no teníamos agua, trajo mucha agua en galones para su cuerpo. Y es conservaba cosas que tú si acaso no hizo falta nada. Sí, estaba pendiente de todo, que no importaba nada. Y bueno, en todas las actividades de fiesta, siempre estaba.
Siempre estaba feliz.
Sí, una vez estábamos el día del padre y Tarcisio que comió carne y no pudo masticar la carne, entonces Miguelito se levantó rápido y lo aplastó aquí en la barriga, lo alzó como un huevo. Gracias a la en un momento, que si él no estuviera ahí, casi nadie iba a poder levantar así.
Y él me devolvió la vida.
En cualquier problema que tuviéramos de salud, él estaba siempre preocupado.
Y era una persona tan sencilla. Vivía con tan poco. Y sí estaba agradecido. Todo. Cada año celebraba el aniversario de estar aquí un año más.
de enero.
Levantaba muy temprano en la madrugada, a las 3 de la mañana, y decía, voy a recibir el sol. Y solo caminaba hacia el Cerro Amigos, y ahí esperaba el amanecer. Y yo decía, pero usted es muy valiente. Y dice, no es tanto, aquí no tengo miedo. Este es mi ambiente y yo estoy feliz siempre. Y es lo que más admirábamos, su humildad, su... Era una persona que podía haber elegido la casa más hermosa. Nosotros no podíamos mucho, pero él ganó siempre nuestro corazón. Siempre fue una persona de amor.
No te preocupes, hermana, me decía. No te preocupes. Váyase de viaje. Yo aquí me la sabía. Porque nosotros nos sentíamos más dejados en la comida.
Él nunca quería ser un estorbo para nadie. Siempre encontraba él siempre encontraba la forma de solucionar cualquier situación conflictiva o no conflictiva. Para él nunca había un impedimento para que los otros fueran felices y pudiéramos disfrutar. Nunca, jamás observamos nada egoísta en él.
Lo invitábamos a jugar en la mesa.
Y siempre compartió cosas simples con nosotros y disfrutaba.
Caminábamos cuando venía que estábamos divertidos. Voy a extrañarlo mucho. Ya lo estoy extrañando.
Él siempre fue un guerrero del amor, digo yo. Conoció nuevos caminos, los exploró, descubrió senderos en el bosque, los caminó. Amó tanto la naturaleza, amó a todas las personas, amó a todo el mundo. Sin embargo, siento que en la última batalla el desamor pudo con él. Ya solo yo me entiendo, pero sí, yo creo que con el desamor no pudo.
I'll try to summarize Marianela and Tarcisio's messages. Too hard to stand up. We miss him. Nela was always with him, was always accompanied by him, made his food, and he was always appreciative of it, even when they didn't have eggs or bread. And when they didn't have eggs or bread, Mike would go get the eggs and bread. He was very much part of the family and always grateful. He lived very, very simply. He could have lived in a fancy house, but he chose to live with us and be part of our family. He would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and hike up to Cerro de los Amigos to watch the sunrise. He loved nature and often went on hikes. He was a warrior, but a warrior for love. He would play games with us. He would be fine if we went on trips and took care of himself. He was a warrior of love for nature, of love for people. But the last battle was hard. And maybe only Tarcisio was aware of it. The last battle was hard. We miss him.
Like to say something else, because I forgot. He used to say that it was like being a boy again, living at this house, because he'd wake up and his mom would make him breakfast, and then pack his lunch, and then he'd ride off to school, and then he would come home. And he added the adult part was take a nap. And then he would go for a walk in the woods. And at night, he would do the dishes. Just like when he was young. Except it wasn't like that when he was young. but yeah, I wanted you to know. And I didn't want to forget something.
Cuando salían siempre me decía, voy a regresar a tal hora, voy a ir a algún lugar. Y casi nunca salía en la noche. Y cuando salía, siempre estaba preocupado en avisarnos que iba a quedarse otro ratito o con quién salía. Siempre hubo una buena comunicación. Nunca supimos. Nunca nosotros estábamos preocupados si él no regresaba a tiempo, porque siempre había esa comunicación. Y sí, yo lo tomé como un hermano, porque él quería decirme mamá y yo le decía, no, soy mejor hermano. Pero a Tarcisio sí le decía papá.
A mí me decía papi. Y yo le puse Miguelito un poco por ironía, porque él es tan alto y al decir Miguelito es pequeñito. Y él estaba feliz que le poníamos Miguelito. Siempre decía papi hasta el último. Papi. Sí,
Sí.
papi, voy a ir al médico, dijo.
Porque Tarcisio sabía a veces hablarle porque tomaba mucho medicamento, decía Tarcisio. Y o se sentía mal, decía Tarcisio. ¿Quién es que ir al médico? Y decía papi.
Pero no hubo tiempo. Estaba tan feliz esa noche, la última noche. Compartí con todos nosotros.
Fue linda esa foto. Porque yo estaba en la clínica, en el hospital, y me enviaron unas fotos que estaba toda la familia. Sin mí. Y él estaba en esa foto sonriendo como siempre. Estaba feliz en la mesa.
Sí, fue su hermana también.
Mamá hermana. Mamá hermana.
No, hermana de
Mike was really good at communicating and letting us know when he was going out, where he was going, who he was going with. So we didn't have to worry about him because he communicated so well. He would call me Marianela, Mama, but Marianela would say, no, I'd rather be your sister. I'd rather be your sister. And he would also call Tarcisio Papi. Tarcisio would call Mike Miguelito, which is kind of ironic because Mike was so tall. He was not little at all. Mike Tarcisio was worried about Mike because of all the medications that he was taking. And that last morning, talked about needing to go to the doctor, and they were getting ready to go to the doctor. But the night before, he had a very happy night. The family was gathered around the table playing games. Marianela was at the hospital, but they sent her pictures of everybody gathered together. And they were very happy that last night. And then Nella also emphasized to Karen, I'm your sister.
I remember Mike for many things, and that he was a very kind person. It just emanated from him. But he was quiet. But what I remember, I'll always remember, was these deviled eggs. When we would go to coffee over at Mary Rockwell's, everybody was bringing something. He would bring deviled eggs. And usually he was on his bicycle. So that meant he had to assemble his deviled eggs while he was there. And they were always so good, but he liked to experiment. And some of them were a little bit hot. So lately it has been at potluck dinners. When I'd see deviled eggs, I'd think, Mike, he did it again. Now, as for me, I love deviled eggs, but I hardly ever fix them because there's so much work shelling all those eggs. So I really appreciated his sharing in that way. But I will miss his deviled eggs, but I'll also miss Mike more. Thank you, Mike.
Conocí poco a Mike, lo estoy conociendo realmente mucho más ahora. Solo tuve la oportunidad de hablar una vez con él y me sentí una unión porque nos tocó trabajar en una situación de bastante estrés y era organizando el intercambio de regalos. Y el estrés llegó al máximo cuando el día de Navidad, que estaban todos recibiendo sus regalos, un niño se quedó sin regalo, un chiquito, y empezó a llorar como 5 años, porque no tenía regalo y yo me sentí en ese momento aterrorizada, paralizada, no sabía qué hacer, no planifiqué nada para un evento así, no me imaginé que alguien podía faltar con su regalo, y menos con un niño. Pero él me tranquilizó y me dijo, no, tranquila, vamos a resolver esta situación. La resolvimos de momento y después, bueno, sí, me tocó hacer el regalo para ese niño, pero en ese momento yo no sabía qué hacer y él simplemente resolvió. Nuestra amistad fue solo por Facebook. No acostumbro a tener amistades así eh, tan impersonales por Facebook, pero con Mike pude hacerlo y me sentía muy cómoda. Quedamos de tomarnos un café que nunca, bueno, ya no fue posible. Solo les deseo a Mike que se cumpla con él y conmigo lo que dijo un astrónomo famoso: somos polvo de estrellas. Y espero que Mike pueda tener ese privilegio.
I didn't know Mike well. I'm getting to know him better today, listening. But we did work together on the Christmas gift exchange. We were in charge one year of the Christmas gift exchange, and it was a very stressful experience because one 5-year-old boy was left without a gift. And I had not prepared for that. I had not thought that this would happen, that somebody would leave a child without a gift. And Mike said, don't worry, we're going to work it out. We will make sure this child receives a gift. And it did work out. And we were going to have coffee together. Now we've lost that opportunity. But we were Facebook friends. Normally I'm not able to have good friends on Facebook, but through Facebook, we did connect.
Esto me recuerda, pues, cuando él tuvo el impactante suceso, pues que fue separado como voluntario. Entonces él tuvo una recaída muy fuerte en su dolencia y estuvo en Estados Unidos recuperando, tratando de salvar su vida. Entonces, pero eso no le impidió seguir con, con la costumbre de la comunidad. Y él organizó ese año eh, el, el intercambio de regalos desde Estados a través del internet. Nos contactó y pues las niñas que son más expertas, los hijos, sí, mis hijos, ellos pues se organizaron, hicieron todo bien bajo la dirección de él, pero no era lo mismo. El año anterior habíamos compartido juntos en casa porque era COVID, no se podía presencialmente, pero estuvimos todos, había una emoción muy grande con Miguelito ahí en la computadora viendo cómo se entregaban los regalos, porque es el evento creo más lindo del año. Y- pero ese año pues, él sufría, no estuvo, pero siempre cumplió, siempre como buen guerrero de amor.
Percicio remembers the year that, the second year that Mike helped to organize the Christmas gift exchange. It had been a hard year, not being able to volunteer, and he'd gone back to the States. to be able to put things back together for himself. And he organized the Christmas gift exchange from afar, and with help from Tarcisio's kids. And it was always such a special time, Christmas with Mike and exchanging gifts. And he did it with great care and with great courage when coming out of a really hard time. I forgot, I'm just remembering another piece of Tarcisio's earlier message that's very important to share. And that is that Mike saved Tarcisio's life when he was eating a piece of meat and started choking on it. Tarcisio is eating a piece of meat and started choking. And Mike did the Heimlich maneuver and saved his life.
My name is Alberto. And though I didn't really have that much communication or at the level that most people here have had, but we did have in common bicycles. And though through recent years, I haven't had a bicycle, but he was up and down all these hills on his bike, and I admired him for that. So we struck up a conversation about that, about his stamina and how he used the bike just to get around about any place here in the community. And so he was telling me about how he had recently gotten this new bike from that was electric, and how that experience was making it so much easier to get up and down these hills. And we're talking about our heights and how hard it is for us to get a bicycle frame the size that will really fit us. And he was saying, yes, he learned that was very, but he had his bike and that worked very well for him. And so I am wishing him the best bike trips he could enjoy.
Deviled eggs, yes. Those were really good. And I appreciated the fact that even though he helped so much here at the school, he would take time, even if it was very busy, he would take time to come to coffee at Mary Rockwell's or at Ellen's, and he'd ride his bicycle and he'd bring his makings for the deviled eggs. It was really great the way he entered into the life of the meeting, the school, the community. Really appreciated that. And the only time I ever saw him in all these years of being forceful and insistent and like he needed to have it done a certain way was during there was a feria or for the electric vehicles and bicycles. And they were doing what do you call that? A float going to be pulled and carried through town. And he was helping with that. And I must not have been doing it quite right. He was like, no, it needs to be done like this. And he was I love to see him on his bike or with the family, with the electric bike, and here in the community. He was always easy to talk to, very
alert, like present with you, and in his conversations, and interested to hear how you are. Now, I remember during the years when David and Amos were gone, we were pretty strapped at one time with a computer problem. And the people that we usually would go to, David and Amos weren't here, but also Bob Law and Joe Stuckey, they were more for hardware problems on the computer and not software oriented. But I remember that it took Ed and Mike, and they both worked on this problem for us, and both came to our home and got it figured out. So I really appreciate that. And when he came to our house, he also took time to show us how to make some of his deviled eggs and some of the secret hot sauces that he put in. I really appreciated that. And yes, feel for you, his family, for all of us, his friends, and we will miss him. I would like the
recipe. Karen wants the recipe.
Quality that I really appreciated about Mike was that he was a social organizer. In the pandemic, particularly, he was always sending around messages, hey, you want to go on a hike? And getting a bunch of people together, and taking great pleasure in figuring out where we were with his GPS, and showing me things on my phone that I had no idea that I could do. It was just great. And in one of those walks, we had done this a long loop and gone to the forest behind the reserve, and came out at the Colibri area, and we're coming down the slightly green sidewalk, and Ed and Mike were in front of me, but it was green. I was kind of testing it, and I thought I should get off, and I ended up breaking my arm, snapping off my shoulder. So I was down on the ground thinking, I hope it's dislocated. And Mike said, well, okay, why don't you just stay there and let's game plan. What do you want to do now? And how do you want to handle this? And I put together this very elaborate plan about going to the clinic and finding out if it was dislocated or broken. And then I'd take a free ambulance down to Punta Arenas, and we'd figure it out, get the x-ray. And then if it was really broken, then I'd probably jump over to SEMA and get the operation as quickly as possible. Said, okay, now this is a pandemic. Are you sure you want to go to Punta Arenas? And the last time I've been in Punta Arenas, we waited in a waiting room with 100 people for 5 hours. So it did not make sense to go to Punta Arenas. And so anyway, we went to Emergencias, but he was just incredibly attentive, and I just really appreciated how conscious he was about helping me figure out what to do in that situation. I was also lucky to be part of a group of guys that he would organize on a regular basis to go and shoot pool. He was a fierce competitor and really good, but he was incredibly kind about not putting it in your face when he destroyed you. And that was a character, an element of his personality that I really appreciated. He was thoughtfully ruthless.
We're going for a little over an hour, just if there's a couple more people who would like to share. Maybe they should do so soon, and then if there are things that people didn't get a chance to share, we invite them to talk directly to Karen or Dell and Regan and Tarcisio and Marianela and Gudari and Ypsilan. So at least they get the benefit of your message or of your memory.
I'm John Voss from Center Monthly Meeting, And we are moved by this turn of events. And I'll never forget how Mike was so welcoming when I'd come with my wife to Monteverde, having had a many-year interest and curiosity about the place. And his generosity shone through. And I'll always be grateful because I'll always be interested in Monteverde and wanting to help.
He told me he wasn't very good at pool. So it's funny to learn that he was winning a lot. Thank you all for loving my dad and for being his community and his family and his friends.
Good morning once again. It's been wonderful having Karen and Dell and Regan to be able to be here for this can't call it a moment, but this long moment. Normally after a meeting for worship, we have things like announcements and introductions. I was going to announce, but Sue has already announced the pool thing. So just remember that everyone's welcome over there in Santa Elena at 1 o'clock. Speak to Sue or Ulysses for further details. Any other announcements that people were wanting to give today at meeting, I would request that you write them on the blackboard easel outside here, and I will send them out by email to our mailing list. And if there is anyone here who is here for the first time besides Mike's family, and just happened upon this thinking you were coming to a normal meeting for worship, we invite you to stand and introduce yourself so that we can, at least a few of us could introduce ourselves to you. Is there any other visitors here? Yes.
My name is Lisa Karpinski. I live in California. I was actually told that this meeting would be to honor my passing, and I used to go to the Quaker meeting in California and wanted to connect with the community. So thank you for having us.
Welcome. Anyone else? Well, I don't know what else to say, but thank you all.
I found it.
Oh, good.
It's also being recorded.
Okay.
One idea would be that if people online could basically say your name.
Yes, that would be great.
And your connection to Mike. And I'm going to switch it to a different view so that the person speaking will be more visible. Is that okay? Everybody can unmute. Unmute while you're introducing yourselves.
I'm John Voss, Center Monthly Meeting.
It's very lab guy.
Les and Karen Page, we knew Mike there in Monteverde, and he loved his family dearly. He loved his Costa Rican family dearly, and I'll miss our hikes and our pool games together.
I'm Robert Johnson. I'm Mike's stepbrother, his older stepbrother, and most of the time I was with Mike and Karen and the family was during the summer when I would come up and visit. And all I got to say is Mike was the smart one.
Ruth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Ruth Comstock. I volunteered for a couple of years at the Quaker School and lived at Tarcissio's Airbnb and got to eat many meals with him and Mike, and I just love to watch them banter.
Ruth Clark, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. I first went to Costa Rica with Mike, and I think it was probably on that trip that he decided that when he retired that he was going to move to Monteverde. Mike and I met online and dated for many years before we eventually bought a house together and lived together with Dell and my two sons in Pennsylvania. Mike and I were together for close to 20 years. And when he went to Costa Rica to live, of course, we would visit when he came back to Delaware to visit Dell. And I've known Karen. We've traveled together to Maui and Yellowstone and San Francisco and LA. So I know Karen and her daughter very well. And even Mike. I know Mike, her husband. And this has been very hard for me. I do know how much Mike loved his family in Costa Rica. I'm sort of like Dell. I did not know Mike knew how to play pool. That is obviously something he learned in Costa Rica because he couldn't play very well when we lived together. Anyway, I'm glad to see a little bit more about where he lived, the people he lived with. I know you're going to miss him. I'm going to miss him. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ruth. Is there anybody else out there that wants to introduce themselves or say hello?
I'm Carol Cedarholm. I live in Ithaca, New York, and I knew Mike through high school and the years he was in Ithaca doing his PhD. And we did a lot of hiking and flower identification and mushrooming, and everything that everyone has said has been true about him for a long time. And I'm very sad about all of our loss, and I will miss him.
I'm Suzanne West, and Mike was my first husband. And although we weren't really ultimately well suited for marriage, we remained friends and good co-parents to our child, Dell. And I just have so many, many fond memories of him. And I'm very grateful that all of you have been sharing here today. And I'm just really sad. I just miss him. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Christine Logan. I'm Dell's aunt, and I knew Mike as a kid, and I knew him as my sister Suzanne West's husband, and I knew him as a father, and have very many fond memories, as Suzanne said. And I'm thinking of Karen and Dell and all his friends and family in Costa Rica.
Thank you.
I just want to add that this is possible because of Mike. He and Ed were the first people that, as volunteers, wired this whole place so that we could have internet and we could have the technology that we needed at the school. I actually have Karen's address in my Amazon account because I think Mike single-handedly paid for and brought at least half of the Chromebooks that exist in the zone. So it's interesting that the Zoom piece is part of Mike's legacy.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Is there anyone else out there who wants to introduce themselves?
I don't know how to do it.
You're doing it, Kate. You're doing it.
Oh, I am so technology challenged, and it was very interesting being with Mike. He thought I was amusing. I loved him so much. He was the love of my life. I met him in graduate school. I can't say goodbye to him yet. I don't know what to do without him. Dell, he loved you unconditionally. And I'd always remind him, hey, have you talked to Dell lately? Oh, that's a good idea, Kate. I think I'll give him a call. And Tarcisio Marinella, you know how much he loved you and how important you and your family were to him. I love you guys. I'm sending you a big hug. He didn't want me to be there, so I didn't come. But I wish I had. Thank you all for doing this for him. He will be so missed. He's such a bright light in the world that is now dimmed. Thank you for doing this.
Kate, I want to tell you that when I think of Mike, some of the happiest moments I saw in his life, he lit up, excited about when you were coming. And when you got here, he would talk about it before you came, and you could see that light just brilliant when you were here. So I hope that that's what you remember.
Thank you.
I won't suggest that we all introduce ourselves now, but it would be fair. But
well, anybody else out there before we say goodbye?
Yeah, this is Charles Robertson with Pat here at Center Meeting, and we've been fascinating hearing so much more about the story of Mike and Monteverde.
And this is Tom Shipman, also at Center Monthly Meeting. I'll try to say this as best I can in Spanish out of courtesy. Muchas gracias para Monteverde Friends Meeting, para usar Zoom, para este meeting. My Spanish is pretty rusty, but I really appreciate Monteverde Friends Meeting sharing this meeting with Center and with everybody who's logged on via Zoom. And I'm just so grateful that Mike was able to find a wonderful community in Monteverde to join.
Thank you for joining. And Wyra sent a note. I'm not sure if Wyra's still there or not, but she says, "Hi, I'm Wyra, part of his host family. I send all my love."
thank you, Katie. Thank you, Mom.
Okay, there's everybody wants to.
We want to see Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.